Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was assassinated because of his political views. We're living in a time of enormous division and tragically hatred, and hatred that manifested in evil that we saw last week. Now, the FBI, working in concert with state and local law enforcement, apprehended what appears to be, in all likelihood, the murderer. And you did so in just 33 hours. So I want to start by just congratulating you and the FBI agents and state and local law enforcement for successfully apprehending the murderer in less than a day and a half. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I have to say, it used to be that to see theater, you had to go to the Kennedy Center. Now, apparently, you need only go to the Senate Judiciary Committee and see our Senate Democrats berating the director of the FBI, which, okay, it's not, partisan politics is not new in the United States Congress. But what is remarkable is what Senator Booker was berating Director Patel about. He wasn't berating him for failing to do his job, but rather he was furious for Director Patel for successfully doing his job. For 4 years, the Democrats under Joe Biden had an open border that undermined the safety of every single American. They allowed 12 million illegal aliens to come into this country to invade this country, and every single day Americans were murdered, women were raped, children were assaulted by violent criminals that Democrats released. Now, Director Patel, I found Senator Booker's questioning really bizarre. He asked you, have you reassigned FBI agents from human trafficking to immigration issues? Director Patel, are the Mexican cartels that are bringing people illegally into this country engaged in human trafficking?
Yes, sir.
What the hell does it mean to reassign someone from human trafficking to immigration? The greatest human trafficking that in the world has been over the last 4 years at our southern border. It is modern day slavery that the Democrats still defend. They still defend those open borders. Mr. Patel, he also said, did you reassign FBI agents from protecting children to immigration? How many children have you found that were victimized by the open borders of the previous administration?
4,700.
4,700. And yet, oddly, I don't hear a Democrat here saying, gosh, thanks for protecting those kids.
35% increase year to date last year.
All right, I want to shift topics. And I want to shift topics to what happened last week. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was assassinated because of his political views. We're living in a time of enormous division and tragically hatred, and hatred that manifested in evil that we saw last week. Now, the FBI, working in concert with state and local law enforcement, apprehended what appears to be, in all likelihood, the murderer. And you did so in just 33 hours. So I want to start by just congratulating you and the FBI agents and state and local law enforcement for successfully apprehending the murderer in less than a day and a half. In the wake of that assassination, we have seen far too many people on the left celebrating the assassination. We've seen Democrats, we've seen activists cheering it on. We've seen, tragically, teachers in high schools, teachers in elementary schools, university professors cheering on the murder of Charlie Kirk. You and I both knew Charlie well. He was a good friend. He was an extraordinary man. And I will say there's a great deal of discussion about what to do about it. Under our Constitution, under the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, speech is protected. And that's true even for vile speech. Someone can stand up and say the most hateful thing, and it's protected by the First Amendment. Nazis and Klansmen can march in the street, and even though their speech is bigoted and horrible and racist, the First Amendment protects it. Conduct, however, is not protected by the First Amendment, particularly conduct that is violent. Violent conduct that is threatening others, that is harassing others, that is injuring, or in this case, murdering others, is most assuredly not protected by the First Amendment. And so I would encourage you and the FBI to focus on conduct. Now, speech can guide you to those engaged in conduct. And I will say one question that I have and many have, and I recognize this is an ongoing investigation, so I don't want you to say anything that would compromise the investigation. But what can you tell us at this point about what evidence there exists of other individuals who may have had prior knowledge of this assassin's plans to murder Charlie Kirk on September 10th?
Generally speaking, we've interviewed numerous people, family members and friends, including the partner, to provide us with a detailed history of the knowledge he may have had, the suspect may have had prior to. We're still mapping out who, if anyone, was involved as an accomplice. As I said, the investigation is ongoing. We're also speaking to and going to interview numerous individuals online who were part of a chat group that was involved in this heinous assassination. And we're also going to work with our state and local partners out in Utah to find out what community organizations, if any, participated or had any foreknowledge of this information. But it's very much ongoing. I remind everybody that it's not even been a week since Charlie's tragic death.
Is it accurate? It's been widely reported that the assassin's roommate was a transgender man who was transitioning to be female, and it's also been reported that they may have been romantic partners. Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator.
And I assume the FBI is investigating. It has also been reported that there were transgender chat rooms that may have had some awareness of the plan to commit this murder. Is that accurate as well?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
It's been reported that there were chat rooms of transgender activists that indicated some degree of potentially a foreknowledge of this murder.
We're still developing that.
Do you have any information? The bullet casings had on them both Antifa and LGBT wording on them. Do you have any indication of the source of those engravings and what inspired them?
As to the actual source, we're still developing that.
I want to encourage you in the course of this investigation, absolutely go after anyone who aided and abetted. But I want to more broadly encourage you, follow the money. The violence we are seeing is not purely organic. There is, I believe, significant money that is spreading dissension, that is spreading violence. Antifa. Do you believe Antifa is a terrorist organization?
I believe Antifa is associated with a lot of violence in this country. As to its designation, I'll leave that to the appropriate authorities.
So I would encourage the administration to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, to go systematically after Antifa. They've committed acts of violence all over the country. And the shell casings have multiple references to slogans that Antifa has popularized. I believe there is considerable money funding it. I would note that I've introduced legislation called the Stop Funders Act. Stop Funders Act would add rioting to the list of predicate offenses under RICO. I believe the money should be tracked and prosecuted under RICO. And both the Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots of a couple of years ago and the pro-open border riots in Los Angeles and other cities of this past year, I believe there was significant money behind those riots. I'm not the only person who noticed at the anti-Semitic protest and violent protests on college campuses that many of the tents all matched. And so I would ask, would it aid your ability to prosecute these matters if Congress passed into law the Stop Funders Act and if rioting was added to the list of predicate offenses for RICO?
Yes.
Talk to me about the efforts of the FBI to go after the funders of the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, the pro-open border protests in cities, and potential LGBT violence. Talk to me about the efforts to go after the money of those who are funding and promoting violence.
As I've always said, Senator, money doesn't lie, and we've been following the money. And so that's what we're doing, issuing lawful process to organizations involved with criminal activity, because the money's got to come from somewhere and it has to be funded somehow. So we have extensive investigations ongoing into numerous organizations that are related to violent criminal activity.
Cutting off the money will make America much safer, and that is the core job of the FBI. And I thank you for doing your job.
It was the sentence that froze the room. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Senator Ted Cruz didn't ease into it. He declared it, let the word assassinated hang there like a bell tolling, then pressed forward with the weight of a prosecutor and the cadence of a eulogy. He praised the speed of the manhunt, just 33 hours, and turned to FBI Director Kash Patel with a single demand: follow the facts, follow the conduct, and above all, follow the money. From that point, the hearing shed its veneer of routine oversight. Cruz's questions moved like a searchlight across a dark landscape. Border violence, human trafficking, political hatred metastasized into murder, and everywhere the beam landed, Patel kept to a careful register. Yes, sir. 4,700. We're still developing that. The numbers and caveats gave the scene its gravity. Cruz argued that Democrats had presided over an open border and asked Patel pointedly if cartels were engaged in human trafficking. The answer was simple. Yes, sir. Cruz demanded to know how many children had been victimized. Patel delivered a number, 4,700, a 35% increase year to date. And then the pivot, the one that charged the air with something harsher than debate. Charlie Kirk was assassinated because of his political views, Cruz said, calling the murder evil, blasting those online voices who had celebrated it, and reminding the room that speech, however vile, is protected, but violent conduct is not. He drew a bright line and asked the FBI to stand upon it. What evidence exists of prior knowledge, of accomplices, of chat rooms that may have trafficked in foreknowledge? Patel affirmed what he could and cautioned what he must. The investigation is ongoing, the map of associations still being drawn. The facts are forming, but not fixed. And yet, a tableau of particulars came into focus. It had been reported, Cruz said, that the suspect's roommate, a transgender man in transition, may have been a romantic partner. Patel acknowledged the reporting as accurate. Cruz pressed on reports of transgender activist chat rooms and of shell casings engraved with Antifa and LGBT language. Patel answered with the restraint of an active probe. We're still developing that. But the senator had already locked onto his target, the celebration of violence, the networks, social, ideological, financial, that transform grievance into action. Money doesn't lie, Patel said, and in that phrase the hearing found its thesis. If speech is the spark, funding is the fuel. Trace the fuel, and you can choke the fire. This is where policy met morality in a stark collision. Cruz urged the administration to designate Antifa a terrorist organization and promote his Stop Funders Act, adding rioting as a RICO predicate to go after the financiers behind street violence, whether at college encampments he labeled anti-Semitic, or in city protests he described as pro-open border. It was a sweeping vision of criminal accountability that sees violence not as spontaneous rage, but as subsidized theater, an argument that, if true, redefines the battlefield from the street to the ledger. Would that new RICO tool help? Yes, Patel answered. What does this moment reveal about government, justice, and the American soul? It reveals a system straining to separate speech from violence in an era when both travel the same highways of virality and outrage. It reveals leadership scrambling to reconcile the promise of freedom with the peril of faction. And it reveals a moral crisis that no statute can fully solve, the normalization of dehumanization. Because buried beneath the legal questions about accomplices and chat logs, engraved casings and funding streams, is a harder truth. Violence doesn't begin with a trigger. It begins with an idea that someone's life counts for less, that someone's voice should be silenced by force, that the enemy isn't wrong, he's undeserving of breath. Cruz's questions cut with that understanding. His praise for the First Amendment was not incidental. It was foundational. You can say the most hateful thing in America, he reminded the nation, and the law will shield your right to say it. But when words harden into threats, when threats ripen into harm, the shield is withdrawn and justice steps forward. That is the moral geometry of a free society. The lines must remain bright, or they will be manipulated into fog. There is also the matter of power. Oversight is power restrained by duty. Prosecution is power restrained by proof. In the exchange between a senator and the FBI director, we witnessed the delicate mechanism of constitutional balance, one branch demanding vigor, the other promising restraint. "We're still developing that," Patel said, again and again. It sounded like caution. It was. Investigations are not performances. They are the slow, ugly way a civil society forces truth to the surface. Cruz's insistence, push for facts, push for networks, push for money, was the counterweight. Pressure that insists evil not hide behind process. And yet, as the minutes passed, the narrative returned to its stark beginning. A man is dead, a public figure slain, a community in grief, the civic space shuddering under the knowledge that political murder has crossed the threshold from nightmare to news. If there is a redemption in this hearing, it is the reminder that a government can still respond quickly, forcefully, lawfully, that in 33 hours the machinery of justice can move with speed, that agents can knock on doors, trace steps, seize devices, and begin to answer the question that is older than politics. Why? And just behind it, who helped? The answer, when it comes, must be more than names. It must be a map. If chat rooms traded hints, map them. If funds moved through shell groups and cutouts, map them. If the slogans engraved on brass were meant to terrorize, map the route from phrase to action. Because law without narrative is a verdict without memory. We need to remember how the pieces fit, or we will never prevent their reassembly. Here is the moral line that should guide us. We can protect speech without sanctifying hatred. We can condemn violence without simplifying the world into tribes, and we can investigate with ferocity while telling the truth with care, however inconvenient, however complex. A free nation demands nothing less. For those who believe hearings should illuminate rather than inflame, who want power held to account, facts pursued to their end, and violence treated with the urgency of a national alarm, stay with us. This is where the noise becomes a signal. This is where oversight meets conscience. This is where we insist that justice be more than a word. Subscribe to Congress Signal. Support our work to expose the truth.